Greg Rusedski just stepped forward and the entire tennis world froze. Before Rome even began, he shielded Alex Eala from a wave of doubt that threatened to erase everything she built. Nobody expected a former Grand Slam finalist to plant himself between a 20-year-old Filipina prodigy and the brutal noise of public criticism. Nobody anticipated that a single podcast offense would silence an army of doubters overnight. Yet here we are, days before the Italian Open, the most prestigious clay tournament outside Roland Garros, and Rusedski's words are spreading through every corner of the tennis universe like wildfire through dry earth. Was this calculated? Was this heartfelt? Or was this the moment that changed Alex Eala's entire trajectory forever? Stay locked in, because what unfolded between Madrid, La Bisbal, and the gates of Rome is a story nobody is telling completely. Until now. Before you can understand why Greg Rusedski's defense shook the tennis world, you have to understand who Alexandra Eala actually is. Not the headline version, not the social media highlight reel, but the full, complicated, electrifying truth. She grew up in the Philippines, a nation that bleeds passion for sports the way most countries breathe air. From the moment she stepped onto a professional court, she carried something enormous, not just a racket, but an entire country's dreams strapped across her shoulders. Millions of Filipinos who had never watched a WTA match suddenly memorized serve percentages. Fans who couldn't name a single Grand Slam winner began tracking live scores at 3 a.m. That kind of devotion doesn't manufacture itself. It attaches to someone genuinely extraordinary. And Eala delivered. She climbed, she fought, she won matches that stunned seeded opponents. She pushed world-class players to the brink when every expert predicted quick exits. By early 2026, she had reached a career-high ranking of world number 29, a number that made the Philippine Tennis Federation weep with pride and made rival coaches quietly study her game. The Miami Open semifinal run in 2025 wasn't a fluke. It was a declaration. Then the clay season arrived, and everything that felt like momentum suddenly felt like quicksand. Clay is different. The physics are different, the footwork demands are different, the mental adjustment is brutal, even for seasoned veterans. For Eala, a player whose natural game thrives on pace, precision, and aggressive angles, red clay became a puzzle she hadn't yet fully solved. The losses began stacking. Stuttgart hurt. Madrid wounded her deeply. A 6-2, 6-1 defeat to world number 21 Elise Mertens wasn't just a scoreline, it echoed loudly. And the critics, who had been circling patiently since her ranking dropped post-Miami, finally opened their mouths. Social media became a courtroom, keyboards became gavels, and a 20-year-old athlete still developing, still learning her craft at the highest level, suddenly found herself defending her very right to belong. But here's what those critics missed. Great champions aren't born in the moments they win. They're forged in the moments everyone expects them to quit. Greg Rusedski was never supposed to become Alex Eala's loudest champion. Let's be honest about that. He's a former British number one, a U.S. Open finalist, a man who built his entire career on a thunderous serve and an uncompromising will to compete. His podcast, Off Court with Greg Rusedski, had become one of the most respected voices in modern tennis analysis. He wasn't known for sugarcoating. He wasn't known for empty encouragement. When Rusedski spoke about a player, the tennis community listened because his assessments carried weight earned through decades of elite competition. So when he stepped onto his platform after Eala's Madrid loss and didn't just defend her, but dismantled every criticism with surgical precision, the reaction was volcanic. Well, it's the heavy hitters. It's being on tour week in, week out. You are going to take some bruising losses, Rusedski stated plainly, not defensively, not emotionally, but with the calm authority of someone who had absorbed those exact same brutal lessons himself. He wasn't offering sympathy, he was offering context. And context, in a world obsessed with instant judgment, felt almost radical. He went further. He pointed directly at the Stuttgart match, a 6-1, 6-4 loss to Elise Fernandez, and reframed it entirely. The player who defeated Eala, Fernandez, went on to push world number 3 Elena Rybakina to 3 sets. That scoreline against Eala suddenly read completely differently, not as collapse, not as fragility, but as evidence that Eala was absorbing losses against players operating at the absolute ceiling of women's tennis. So the losses she takes are not bad losses. It's sometimes the scorelines at times, Rusedski clarified. 5 words. Scorelines at times. That phrase rippled through tennis forums, fan groups, and media outlets within hours, because Rusedski had articulated something Eala supporters felt but couldn't quite frame. The identity of an opponent matters as much as the margin of defeat. Losing badly to exceptional players during a learning curve on your weakest surface is not a crisis, it's development. But the tennis world's appetite for controversy doesn't pause for nuance. Some responded with gratitude. Others pushed back harder, questioning whether Rusedski's repeated defense of Eala represented something beyond professional admiration. Was this bias? Was there a deeper agenda? Or was this simply a veteran recognizing a generational talent and refusing to let premature criticism derail her career? The whispers grew louder, and Rome, just days away, suddenly carried a weight far beyond ranking points.
Strip away the drama, the social media wars, the podcast soundbites, and the tribal fan loyalty, and what remains? A 20-year-old athlete from the Philippines, ranked 44th in the world, training alongside world number 3 Iga Swiatek, carrying a nation's collective heart into every match she plays. A player who, at 20, has already defeated Swiatek, pushed Goff and Rybakina to their limits, and established herself as someone capable of competing at the absolute summit of professional tennis. The clay losses weren't revelations of limitation, they were the curriculum. Every elite clay court player, Swiatek included, experienced a period of surface adjustment that demanded patience from coaches, fans, and analysts alike. The difference between those who break through and those who break down in those transitional periods is rarely talent, it's support structure. It's the presence of experienced voices refusing to permit premature conclusions. Rusedski's decision to become that voice, repeatedly and publicly, matters far beyond a single podcast episode or a trending sports debate. He positioned himself as accountable. Every future Eala result would now exist against the backdrop of his declarations. If she struggled further, his credibility faced scrutiny alongside hers. That's not a risk someone takes carelessly. That's conviction. And there are layers the casual observer might miss entirely. Rusedski explicitly praised not just Eala's talent, but her team structure, acknowledging that great people surrounding a developing athlete often determine trajectories more powerfully than raw ability. He noted that Tony Nadal's involvement represented a knowledge injection that few players at any ranking level access. Training at the Rafael Nadal Academy, absorbing clay court wisdom from the greatest clay court dynasty in tennis history, while simultaneously preparing for Rome, that combination carries a different weight than the scorelines from Madrid suggest. The truth beneath the noise is uncomfortable for critics. They evaluated Eala's clay court defeats in isolation, detached from the development arc, the clay court transition challenges, and the institutional investments surrounding her preparation. Rusedski refused that isolation. He insisted on context. And context, when applied honestly, tells a completely different story. One that ends not with a player in retreat, but with one positioned, if the preparation delivers its promise, for a breakthrough that nobody saw arriving. History doesn't remember the critics. It remembers the breakthroughs. Greg Rusedski stood between Alex Eala and the crushing weight of premature judgment at the most vulnerable moment of her 2026 clay season. Whether Rome delivers the result her supporters desperately want or extends the difficult stretch she's been navigating, that defense represents something that outlives any tournament scoreline. It represents the recognition that generational talents require generational patience. The tennis landscape is littered with players who possessed everything required for greatness, but encountered environments where doubt arrived before belief and never fully recovered. What Rusedski created, through consistent, intelligent, public advocacy, was an ecosystem of belief that surrounds Eala as she walks onto the Foro Italico clay. That's not nothing. That's everything. The Filipino nation that rallies behind her, filling stadiums, tracking matches across time zones, sending her love and passion through every medium available, deserves a player who arrives at Rome not diminished by controversy, but strengthened by knowing that expert voices see what they see: a future champion in the complicated, bruising, necessary process of becoming. Ayla's story isn't finished. It's barely past its opening chapters. She's 20 years old, ranked 44th globally, training with Swiatek, coached by Tony Nadal's wisdom, and stepping onto one of the world's most prestigious clay courts with the backing of a tennis legend who staked his professional credibility on her future. Rusedski said she's the real deal. He said the top 10 isn't a fantasy, it's a destination. He compared her cultural significance to Manny Pacquiao. He built a public argument that will exist in tennis record long after this particular clay season concludes. Was he right? Rome will offer evidence. Roland Garros will add testimony. And the full verdict, the one that matters most, will arrive across the next 5 or 10 years of professional tennis, as the 20-year-old girl from the Philippines reshapes the sport in ways that today's critics cannot yet imagine. This isn't the end of Alex Eala's story under pressure. This is the chapter where she decides who she becomes because of it. So, here's the question worth sitting with as you head into the comments below. Was Greg Rusedski witnessing something the rest of the world is simply not patient enough to see yet? Or was he defending the impossible? Drop your answer below. The debate belongs to you. If this script moved you, hit subscribe, because every week we dive deeper into the stories beneath the headlines, the drama, the devotion, the human truth behind professional tennis. Tap the bell. Don't miss the next chapter.